Live from Johannesburg, this is Africa Nightly. Hello, welcome to Africa Nightly. I'm your host, Nick Moon. Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah, we have a lot of special things for you tonight. We're going to talk about the government, some economy, and we got a few special guests for you tonight, so we'll be right back. Hello, welcome back, everybody. Alright, that's enough. This is Africa Nightly, a show that we focus on standards. For those of you who have never watched us before, welcome, and for those who have, welcome back. And a warm welcome to Miss Dreese's class over Watching in America. So I hope you enjoy the show, and today's standards are... Those are some great standards. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back with Africa Nightly. The first standard we are going to learn is SS7E2, which focuses on economy. Alright, in this standard, let's begin. Say we want to know how specialization encourages trade between countries. Well, specialization encourages trade between countries because what if the country doesn't have that product? Then you need the other country that specializes in that to help you get that product. That's why specialization helps a country get what it needs. Alright, now let's compare the three different types of trade barriers: tariff, quota, and embargo. Let's start with tariff. Tariff is a tax on an imported good. Say here in Africa, we specialize in agriculture. So, if we were to send some agricultural products, to another country, there would be a tariff, which is a tax. So we can't just send them the product. There has to be a tax for like shipping and stuff. So we tax the product so they pay us money to pay off that extra stuff. You know what I'm saying? Now let's talk about a quota. A quota is a limit on what you export. Say we're exporting a ton of agricultural products, to another country. We can't just send all our agriculture to that country. So what we have to do is put a limit on what we export. That way we don't export too much products. The last trade barrier I would like to talk about is an embargo. An embargo is when you stop trade with a country. Every country in Africa has an embargo on North Korea. That is a really big deal. That means North Korea cannot get any products from Africa. Anything made in Africa can't go to North Korea. So now that you know what embargo, a quota, and a tariff is, you should know why some countries won't trade with others or how they trade with others. Now, let's talk about currency exchange. Okay, first of all, what you need to know, currency is money of a country. You know, the moolah in a country? Alright, anyway, that was kind of stupid. But, anyway, currency exchange is very important for trade because you can't really tell the different values without a currency exchange system. So, you need a system that can tell the difference between the money so you know how much money to give the other country so they can exchange the currency. And that, my friends, is why you need a currency exchange system. Let's talk about the next standard, SS7G4. The first thing you need to know is the difference between an ethnic group and a religious group. First of all, they are very different. An ethnic group is, say, your race, the color of your skin, which is pretty much the same thing. But a religious group is what you believe in, and you can change that. But you cannot change your ethnic group. Let's talk about the four ethnic groups: Arab, Ashanti, Bantu, and Swahili. Let's talk about the religions of these four ethnic groups. Alright, let's start off with Arab. Arab is an Islamic ethnic group. They are mostly Muslim, maybe a little bit of Christian in there, but they are mostly Muslim. Alright, now let's move on to Bantu. Bantu is Islam and Christianity. They are both. So that means they're around 50% of both, but there are some traditional beliefs in there. So it'd be kind of off. So now let's move on to Ashanti. Ashanti is also Muslim and Christian. They are just like Bantu. Alright, last but not least, Swahili. Swahili is mostly traditional beliefs, but they are kind of Islam. They believe in most of the stuff that Muslims do, but they are mostly traditional beliefs. Now that you've learned the ethnic groups and their religions, let's move on. Alright, let's talk about literacy rate and how it affects standard of living. Alright, say you have a bad literacy rate, which means no one can really read or write. That would affect the standard of living in a bad way, which means if you can't read that well, you won't be able to get a good job, you won't be able to go to college and get a good education about things. It'll affect a lot of things, which isn't good at all. Now, if you have a high literacy rate, that means a lot of people can read and write, and you'll have a higher standard of living, which means you can read and write, you'll get a good job, you'll go to college. It's really good if you have a high literacy rate. Alright, 2 standards down, 2 to go. Now, let's move on to the next standard. SS7CG1. Alright, let's talk about the 3 distributions of power. Unitary, Confederation, and Federal. Let's start off with unitary. A unitary government is where you have, let's look at this like an octopus. You have the big central government, and then you have all the units around it, say like the states, and like it's compared to America. You have all the states. Now, imagine the powers of the states bigger than the central government. So it would be like a little octopus head with giant legs. That's how I would look at a unitary government. Alright, now let's move on to a confederation. A confederation is a big central government and then all the units around it, but this time the central is a giant head and then little tentacles on the sides. That's how I would look at a confederation. Now let's look at federal. Okay, so you have a federation. Now you got the big octopus head, and then you have all the units. They're the same size. That's how I would look at a federation. Now let's look at citizen participation. You have autocratic, oligarchic, and then, last but not least, democratic. In an autocratic government, you're going to have one person in control. The citizens have little to no rights. In an oligarchy, it's the same thing, but there's a group of people that run the government, and the citizens will have little to no rights. In a democracy, you have all the people involved in the government. That's how all those things work. Okay, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about the 2 different types, or the 2 predominant types of democracies. Parliamentary and presidential. Let's start off with parliamentary. A parliamentary democracy is when there's a prime minister and maybe a king or queen as a figurehead, which means there's a head of state and a chief of state. The head of state has all the power and the chief of state doesn't. He has 0 power. Now, say you have a legislature. Well, there is a legislature. The prime minister is not selected by the people. The prime minister is selected by the legislature, who's selected by the legislature is selected by the people who vote for the prime minister. That's how parliamentary democracy works. Let's move on to presidential democracies. We have plenty of those here in Africa. They probably don't. Some people think they don't. They say they are, but I personally don't think they actually are presidential democracies. Alright, anyway, let's take a minute to look at this. Okay, you have all the people in a country, and then you have a president. So, how does the president get there, you may ask? Well, instead of having a legislature vote for the president and the people vote for the legislature, you have just the people vote for the president. That's how presidential democracy works. Let's move on to the next standard, SS7CG3. Let's move on to AIDS and famine. Okay, in Africa, this is an epidemic that is terrible. So, let's talk about how we can fix it. Well, the problem is that Africa has very corrupt governments. There is lack of education on AIDS and famine. There's religious beliefs that believe like AIDS is Satan inside your body. But with a little bit of donations, you can help with education. Not too sure about the religious beliefs and the corrupt governments, but this is a big problem in Africa and it needs to be fixed.